And
2 weeks now.
we got a ton of questions from you guys. We didn't get through all of them. So we brought Kevin back. We're going to bring him on here in a second. But what we want to do is we're going to have Kevin kind of run through some tips for us. We're going to talk a little bit about keeping your golf game in shape during this lockdown. I know it's been a challenge. We've been talking about it on the podcast. We've been talking about some things you can do at home. I've been working on my putting here, Mike. I know you've been doing some chipping in that backyard.
Doing a lot of chipping back in backyard, even doing some indoor putting as well. I'm trying to do as much as I can. Golf clubs are just sitting dormant and quiet over there, though. That's for sure.
I know. It's sad, but we'll be back out there. And then we got all the courses in New York and New Jersey closed right now, but we'll get back out there. But like I said, we got Kevin Sprecher with us, and what we're going to do is start posting your questions. Again, I can't guarantee we'll get to everybody's, but if you've got questions for Kevin, and remember, we've worked with Kevin from lessons and also from fitting. He's able to balance both sides of the house there. So if you've got a question, either one, if you're watching this on either, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching it, post your questions. We'll see as many as we can and we'll fire them off. And we got Kevin here. Kevin, good to see you again.
Hey guys, nice to see you.
You too.
Hope things haven't gotten any worse since the last time we've talked. Maybe a little better.
Yeah, things are good. We're staying healthy, but like I said, when that news came down that the course is all closed, they
shut us down. We got the call this past Sunday. My board decided that we're gonna. They needed clarification about Governor Cuomo's statement, and we shut down Sunday for no golfers. Members are allowed to come walk the course, hike around, take a look, but no golf. So, and we're all a little despondent right now. We're hoping that April 29th date that he mentioned, he sticks to it and lets us get back out there, because it's killing you when the weather's like it was today, isn't it? I mean, it's 50 degrees and sunny. I'm driving around the course patrolling, making sure there's no golfers out there. And I'm like, God, it's just perfect out here. And then kind of, fortunately the Masters wasn't on. I think it was good that the Masters wasn't on, because it kind of suppresses the golf bug. This is usually when we kind of kick off our season with Masters week and stuff.
Right. Of course. Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, if nothing else, we just push that whole season further down the line with November Masters. And I'm just starting to see some questions and stuff rolling in here, and it looks like some people are still playing. Riley says they're still golfing out there in Utah. So that's terrific. So some people are playing, but most of us are under the same conditions that we're under. So
before we get going, I just want to, I hope they keep the Masters in November, because now I can go. I can't take a week off in April.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go down now. I got a hotel room booked. I'm booking my flights, and a buddy of mine are gonna go down. Because November we're almost shut down. So I'm kind of excited about it.
That's awesome.
Might be a new trend.
Yeah, they're not kidding.
New trend.
That's cool. And I think someone had commented the other day, and they made a good point. They said, well, at least now we'll get 2 Masters in a 6-month span.
That's a good point. Didn't think about that.
Yeah. All right. So I got some questions coming in, some different ones coming in here, but I wanted to talk to you just generally speaking. If you've got any tips, whatever you're doing with your students right now, is there any guidance that you're giving them to kind of stay with it, so they're not getting too far away from where they left off with their golf game before this whole lockdown happened?
Yeah, it's tough, and fortunately we've had some good weather. So I'm telling all my people to go outside and just swing. I think just taking the club, no ball, and then just get your body moving, get used to it, get used to swinging the club again. I think now is a great time. I'm usually saying this in October, November, because we're going into the off season. Now is a great time to kind of work on some of the hard things. And we kind of got a little screwed with it, because we came out of the season early. I mean, I was out teaching in March, and then all of a sudden it got taken away from us again. So now we're kind of into a forced off season again. So it's almost like a restart for the winter. But I think getting out, doing some swings, get your golf muscles used to moving. One is it gets you up out of the sofa or away from the computer screen. I came upstairs earlier this evening, and both my wife and my daughter look at me and goes, "What's wrong with your eyes?" I'm like, "Well, I've been looking at a computer screen all day like this." I don't have COVID. They're like, "You got COVID." I don't have COVID. I'm okay. So just get out, swing. You can, if you can't swing outside, swinging inside's great.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a club. I actually have an exercise ball that this is a 9-pound ball that I like to hold and then get motion going and just kind of feel some things. And as you're swinging, focus on different parts of your body. So like I'll start out, I'm going, okay, I'm just going to feel my feet and feel the pressure kind of shift right and left. Where does the pressure go in my feet? And okay, now I'm going to go my knees. What are my knees doing? Am I straightening up too much? Am I swaying too much? You can obviously use some kind of a mobile device as a camera,
mm-hmm.
or if you have a mirror. So I think feedback is great. As you know, and most of us know, what we're doing and what we're feeling usually don't sync up.
Mm-hmm.
So watching yourself, like I'm looking at myself here, I'm just kind of watching, making sure I'm not going way over here and way over there. And then I'll feel my hips, am I turning my hips properly, or am I swaying?
Mm-hmm.
And then how much am I going with my upper body? Just kind of work your way up through your body, just to kind of sense what you're doing, and do it without shoes on. I think it's great to feel the ground. I think a lot of times when we wear shoes, especially when we're inside, you're probably wearing slippers or loafers or something comfortable, which doesn't provide a lot of support. And we've talked about golf shoes in the past.
Yep.
So go barefoot, so you kind of wake up your feet and learn to feel what your feet are doing. I think it's okay to actually lift your feet. I'm going to agree with Brandel on that one. Lifting the left heel up it's actually a great speed drill. If you want to work on some speed in your swing and you feel kind of stuck,
mm-hmm.
Lift your left foot up and then use that as your downswing trigger. Everyone kind of asks, well, how do you start the downswing? And we've all heard, okay, I need to start with my lower body, but what does that really mean?
Right.
Well, if I lift my left heel up, my foot's got to go down first, because if I swing my arms first, it's kind of awkward. So I lift my foot up, put it down, and then go ahead and swing. And it's just a great way to kind of get moving and get some stuff going. I also think it's good to swing something without a club head, whether it be something like I love this orange whip thing. This is actually a short one that I can actually swing inside.
Right.
So I can make little swings here inside, and just because when you swing something that doesn't have a face, and you're not trying to make a ball go somewhere, you're going to change the path that you swing the club. So we all know that the number one problem that golfers face is slicing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Well, slicing the ball comes from the club swinging to the left too much, but swinging to the left comes from your club face being open.
Mm.
Right? Because my face is open, my ball goes to the right, so I better swing left so I don't hit it to the right. The problem is, when you swing left with an open face, what do? You hit a bigger slice.
Right. Come across. Yeah.
So if I don't have something to slice and I don't have a face that's open, I'm not going to – I promise, I'll almost guarantee if you swing something without a club head, you're not going to swing like this.
Right.
Because when you grew up playing baseball or you play any sport, you don't do this naturally. It's not a natural it's not a natural athletic motion.
Mm.
If you took something and just swung it around your body this way without thinking about it, you can see as I come down, that club's coming down here very easily.
Yeah.
So take the club head away. You're going to change your swing direction, which is going to affect which is going to change the way you swing the club. And I say swing direction because getting a little technical here is most golfers think club path determines the curve of the shot, but as players we can't feel club path. So what club path is as the club head travels through the ball, it's traveling on a certain path, and you need something to measure that, whether any kind of launch monitor. As a player, you feel swing direction. If I tell you to swing to the right or swing to the left, that's swing direction, not path. Path comes from the angle of attack. I'll get a little technical again. It comes from how much you're hitting down on the ball and at the angle that plane is on.
Mm-hmm.
We swing on a certain plane. So the steeper the plane or the flatter the plane, so it affects your path. So changing your swing direction now is a great way to get it, or swinging without a club head so you can change your swing direction is a great thing to work on right now.
For sure. And, as we're talking about one big thing, and we've talked so much about rotation, one question that came in here, somebody says, my question is getting their hips through. He says, since my back injury, I've had a little bit of trouble. Any tips there for, I guess, getting the hips through if you're working with a little bit of an injury or some sort of mobility issue?
Yeah, and that's pretty common amongst most people who have, sitting in the chair or just tightness. So a couple of things you can do is you can adjust your stance width, right? If the wider you get, the more stable you are, the harder it is to turn, and you tend to go more laterally. The narrow you get a little bit more mobile, so it's easier to turn. So that's one thing is you can go ahead and narrow your stance. You can go pretty narrow too. I mean, I can go so the middle of my foot is underneath the points of my hip. That's pretty narrow, but that's going to allow you to move. You can change your foot position. So here's something. If everyone who's listening, go ahead and stand up, right? I'll give you a second to stand up and take your toes and point your big toes towards each other. So your feet are like this, right? Now try to turn your hips. You're going to feel restricted. Okay, now take your toes and turn them out away from you. So now your toes are pointing out this way, and you'll feel much more mobility in your hips. So you can do a combination of stance width, and always remember that stance width is really determined by how far apart your heels are, or by where the center of pressure is on your feet if we get real technical. But what I'm talking about is if you get your heels narrow, your toes a little bit wide, you'll get a little greater range of motion. If you need even more, go ahead and let your feet come off the ground. So in your backswing, let your left heel come off the ground. That'll take pressure off of your body because you won't put as much torque on it. So you'll actually make a pretty big turn, but your hips and your shoulders will turn the same amount. Let's say your shoulders will turn 75 degrees, your hips will turn 60 degrees, but at least you're able to get the club back far enough to generate some speed. If you didn't lift your heel up, you may only get 50 degrees of shoulder turn and 40 degrees of hip turn, but your arms can only get here. So it's still only a 10-degree difference. The problem is the club doesn't go back far enough, so then you tend to get quick with your arms.
Gotcha.
So that's one thing you can do. The other thing I would recommend is some kind of stretching.
Yeah.
Even for an injury, obviously talk to your medical professional first and make sure it's okay.
Right.
But if you can kind of get some, I find a lot of men, if you ask them to touch their toes, they go like this, and it's not so much that their hamstrings are tight, but it's their IT bands. So we have a fascia band going down the sides of our body, and if we can loosen that up, you'd actually be surprised how much farther down you can go just by loosening that up without your hamstring.
Yeah, and like you said, not even just people who have the injuries, but all of us right now, sitting in different positions, being home, whatever. All of us can benefit from that.
Absolutely.
Tony here says, he just asked if this is being recorded so you can watch later. And yes, by the way, guys, this video was going to remain live on all of our channels going forward. So if you don't get a chance to watch the whole thing, and like I said, you'll be able to kind of go back for it. It was another, switching gears with fitting. I saw a question here, and actually I was just on, I just hopped on Aaron Dill, who, with Vokey. He just did a live, and a lot of people were asking him shaft questions. So let's see. Greg here says, I know it depends on the fitting, but typically do you recommend wedges with lighter shafts than in the iron set?
No, actually heavier. I recommend you go a heavier shaft because you want the feel of the club. When you go lighter with your shaft, you tend to lose a little bit of feel. It can make the balance of the club a little bit off, or the head actually feels too heavy. So I typically, like myself, I use a 120 gram iron shaft, and I use a 127 gram wedge shaft. And even somebody who's using a 95 gram shaft in their irons, I'm going to tell them, let's go 115, maybe even 120 in the wedges. Because you're not looking for speed, you're looking for feel, being able to control the club. So having a little bit more weight in the shaft helps. Yeah. And then I think I mentioned this the last time we spoke. Typically I'll go the same flex or actually a little softer flex in the wedge, because you're doing these small little finesse shots that you want to feel that the shaft to kick a little bit. The shaft's not going to take spin off or add spin in a wedge. You see these shafts high revs or high spin or max. Shafts do very, very little in helping to produce spin. It's the face and ball and the contact that helps produce the spin.
Yeah, and
that was a good question.
And what you said there, I'll never forget it from my fitting with you when we did the irons. And when we went to a lighter shaft, and all of a sudden we saw that dispersion kind of jump all over. And then we went to the heavier shaft and it tightened right up. And you said that was the reasons. Like, now you can feel the face. You couldn't feel where the face was before. So that definitely hits home for me.
Spreck, I wanted to jump in real quick. Just a personal question. Are you taking any cuts lately? I know you got that beautiful little setup and simulator back at Sleepy, but are you doing anything right now or what?
I try to. One of my buddies, James Hong, was asking what people are doing, and I try to go outside and do some swings. I'm using my super speed golf, so trying to work on my speed. I got reinvigorated. I turned 50 this year or last year, and about 4 years ago, I wanted to see how fast I can swing. I think I was 46, 47, and I got my speed up to 118. And I'm like, and now I've got some time, and I've been working out at home a little bit every day and stretching. And I'm like, I want to see how fast I can go again. So I'm doing some super speed stuff, and then I live in a housing community, but I have a patio that I can hang a net from. So yesterday was the first day I set it up. It's been nice, and I actually hit some balls yesterday.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm trying to do that, and if I can't swing outside, because of the weather, I got my orange whip here that I do. I like, and this is a great speed drill for people. I like to do short swings with some speed. I'll see if I can do it here without kind of knocking anything, but I kind of get going back and forth here. Because when you add a little bit of speed with your body, you have to use your feet over here. Then they got a slide going this way. You can't make this motion that I did and sway. It's not possible, because if you sway, it's going to pull you way off, and there's no way to generate speed. So for somebody who's swaying, this is a great drill, just to kind of take a short club or a 7-iron or something, grip down on it, and get your body to turn back and turn through, and do it with some speed going back and going through, because you got to use the ground to brace yourself so you don't fall over. So it's a terrific drill to do, and I've been doing that, just trying to trying to retrain my body, get the speed back up like as if I was in season. So that's a terrific drill to do.
I like that one. Paul,
this is good for your cardiovascular. You can hear I'm breathing a little bit heavy now after doing that.
Yeah.
So if you need
take a breath, sit down for a second.
That one's also good for your cardio.
He's getting his
I hate
workout.
doing cardio, but the super speed stuff and swinging that fast gets your heart rate up. It's good. And I'm gonna segue into, if you do that and then go hit some putts inside, right? What happens when you get nervous? Your heart rate goes up, you get a little jittery. Well, that's a great way to practice. Is go ahead and swing hard, get your heart rate up, and go over to your putting mat and see if you can make a couple of 3-footers and see how you feel.
Yeah. Well, hey, you said you'll be talking to Ian in a couple of days, and he's a master of that. I don't know if you've seen what he does with his college students, but he gets them stressed out, man, before they have to do something. He makes them do sprints up hills and everything else.
It's great. Yeah, I've got Ian on tomorrow night.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Paul asks, how do I get consistency with my chipping from just off of the green? So if he's struggling with those really close chips just off the green, is there something you could guide him with that?
So let me grab a wedge here. So one of the things I find a lot of people don't do correctly is how tight they hold the club with chipping. They hold it pretty loosely, and then they get a little, you see my wrist here? Yeah. So they get a little flippy with your wrist, and what happens is that changes your low point. The low point is the point at, whoops.
He's got a hole in his ceiling now.
I took out my light. The low point's the point at which the club kind of finishes bottoming out and starts working back up. And with chipping, we want that to be, sometimes it can actually be behind the ball, but it's pretty close to underneath the ball because of the angle of attack. So I actually like to increase my grip pressure for chipping. Not so tight where I lose my wrist motion, but I reduce how much they can move. So I'll get set up there, hold it about, if my normal full swing grip pressure is, let's say, a 5, I'm going to go to a 7 with both hands, definitely with both hands. And the other thing I may do is I'm going to get the club a little bit more vertical. By getting the shaft more vertical, it allows you to get closer to the ball, which then makes it easier to keep the club in front of you. So when I go back, can you guys see that with the club head staying out in front of me? One of the big problems amateurs get into is the club head gets behind your hands. And in a short stroke like a chip, it's hard to recover from there because it's hard to hit down. So if the club head's over here, you either have to reroute, and that's typically when you shank it, okay? Or you have to scoop, push the club head out in front of your hands to get the club to catch up, and that's when you bottom out or you top it or scull it. So I would say those two things in your setup, the adding some grip pressure, getting the shaft more vertical, will help the head doesn't get inside your hands too much. I used to work for Jim McLean. I worked for Jim down at Doral for probably 25 years. And during our chipping clinics, one of the things he's always said, and I'll never forget this, is he goes, if I'm chipping for hundreds, okay, we're out there, the three of us are betting, and we're chipping for hundreds, I'm going to make sure that club head's out here because I can get it to drop down on the ball from here very easily. If I get the club over here, we're done. I'm going to, if I see somebody going inside like this, I'm going to quadruple the bet because I know when I put some extra pressure on them, there's no chance they're going to make contact.
Yeah. I especially like that.
I hope that answers it.
I especially like that grip pressure thing because I remember when we were out there at Sleepy Hollow like 2 years ago, I had so got into my head about this idea of gripping the club so light, and with my putter too, and you had originally pointed that out. I thought at first you're trying to trip me up, be like, how tight are you gripping that? And I'm like, no, plenty loose, trust me. And you're like, no, I want you to go tighter, because of the fact that I was doing a similar type of thing as you're explaining with the chipping, but on a smaller scale with putting. So it's a thought that I hadn't had before, and I've since tightened it up. But since you said that, it is helping me.
Yeah, I think when a lot of players that they think they need, they're trying to hit soft, delicate shots, so they think they got to have a soft grip.
Yeah.
But the problem is the club head's got some weight to it, and then you put it in motion, and then you kind of lose control of the club. So I like people to get a little bit tighter around the greens, get a little bit more control. Again, you're not hinging your wrist. You can still hinge them, but you've got more control over it. So it's a little bit easier to be more consistent that way.
Gotcha.
Kevin, I got a question again. We talked today on the podcast. We filmed the episode that comes out this Sunday. It was all about fixing the chicken wing swing. And we were talking about the drill, the old school drill of putting the towel under the arm. And everyone seems to know that one. And this is something I suffer with. So is there any other quick drill for this that you recommend?
So I'm glad you brought that up. I like to take an exercise band. So this is kind of this is red. They come in different strengths. You can get a yellow, which is a little bit softer. This is kind of a mid one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around my body, create a little hoop here. So I got a little piece sticking out that I'm going to grab with my club and my hands. So you can see that. So you can see here.
Yeah.
So you can see how I'm grabbing it in there. So now the band's trying to pull my arms in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to grip down the club here a little bit. So now I've got to make sure I keep my arms stretched out when I go through the shot. Okay, and then the other thing that it does, so chicken wings don't come because you pull your arms in. Chicken wings come from because your chest doesn't rotate through in the downswing. If your body stops turning, your arms are going to automatically do this. You're not trying to pull them in, unless you're trying to prevent the ball from hooking too much, but you're not trying to pull them in. My right arm can only extend that far if I don't turn, so that then this is going to happen. If I keep my body turning, my right arm can stay extended. I'm going to finish out here. You see that? Let me get more in the middle here.
Yeah.
So if I don't turn, I do this. If I do turn, I do that.
Right.
So by using the band, and again, you don't have to use a club. You can just hold the band out here. Okay. Turn back, got good extension. And then I got good extension going through because I'm turning my body. And the band, I like something that creates resistance. I don't like weighted stuff, but the band's forcing me to do something to prevent it from pulling in. And plus it's also an external cue. As humans, we learn much faster using an external cue like the band versus me saying, okay, I'm going to take my arms and keep them straight, because my arms are an internal thing. And that's something I've learned from a motor learning guy out in California, Will Wu. Will's one of the great motor learning specialists in the world. And from the studies that he's seen, we learn much better using an external cue. So another external cue might be, say, Frank, you're not turning through. So take the buttons on your shirt and turn them to the target. That's an external cue. So that would be a great way to do it. But the answer to the chicken wing question is it comes from lack of upper body rotation. So this is, the band's a good thing. If you don't have a band, you can get a rope, just something to hold it out. Or you can, if you have a big enough towel, take a long towel, something to hold it out in front of you.
You know what I love too? You know what that reminds me of is the plane mate.
I was thinking the plane mate right away.
Works kind of like that. But this is kind of, it's great. It's like a really simplified way of doing the same type of thing. Yeah, that's terrific.
Don't tell Martin that. Martin's got to sell plane mate.
Right, of course.
Got to keep him going. and I've got my plane mate right over here, and it's a great device.
Yeah.
But the band's also it's another version of that, and how to do it. And the bands are a lot less.
Right, of course. Well,
plus you can use them for home exercise.
Tell me this too. And now, because going back to Mike's question, because I gotta feel like I got to settle this. If I was right or wrong, I made a judgment call on the podcast today, and I said, Mike, I don't know if you're truly chicken winging that much, because Mike rotates pretty well. But we were looking at some of the pictures that we had taken in Scotland and stuff, and it looks like he's got a chicken wing. But if you look at it, it's a little bit after and through impact. And I said, I think it's because you're coming down so steep. You know how steep Mike is, right? He's coming down so steep. He's making that huge divot, but he's making good contact, and the ball sails off. But then at some point, that club is just going to be stopped by the ground, and I think that starts to jut his elbow out. So it almost, you seem like you're getting a chicken wing, but in reality, he's got that arm in tight through impact. But then as he hits the ground and starts to come down, it just kind of stops the club and gets him jammed up.
Yeah, you're right there. It's probably right, but it gets jammed up. It's a different cause of a chicken wing.
Right.
And look, I'll show you some tour players that have some left arm breakdown at impact. What's his name from Texas? I just drew a blank on his name. Jordan Spieth, right?
Yeah,
he's got a little bit of that. And he actually does it intentionally. I heard from his I think it was from his coach Cameron said that he does it because he feels like it allows him to keep the face square longer. And so he's learned to do that. There are some Lee Westwood. He's another guy. He's got a little bit of left arm break. So it's something. If you're striking it well, you don't want to take it out. I think that's one of the challenges of being a coach. Is it's much easier to coach somebody into a bad swing than it is than into a good swing. So there's sometimes you don't want to take that out. If Mike's hitting it really well and he's doing really well, I'm going to let Mike have a little bit of chicken wing going through there.
Right.
I'm more worried about Mike blowing out a wrist or me stepping into one of Mike's divots, breaking an ankle or something.
Careful on those.
Right. Well, don't worry. We still got him doing the push-ups for the driver divots. We've
always going to be doing those.
Yeah, we haven't stopped that. We've continued that.
Drivers should not be dirty.
No.
Yes.
One kind of common theme question I've seen a couple people ask is what they can do to make sure that they're working on and actually improving their putting stroke at home. So, for example, right now we see on social media, everyone's indoors and you see a lot of people sharing videos of themselves kind of grinding it out and putting like with the putt out like I have here or something like that. But obviously there's just constant repetition and then there's actually improvement. So is there something that, or a tool, a mirror, what would you suggest so that people are actually not just putting endlessly, but they're actually getting better?
Yeah. So you want to have some kind of feedback, something to measure. Because if you're not measuring what you're doing, you don't know if you're getting better or worse. So there are great devices. Obviously video is always good. Everyone's got a phone, and on the phone, just put your phone down on the target line. So like if I was putting towards you, or if I was putting this way, I'd have where you guys are the phone. So this way I can see the path of the club.
Mm-hmm.
and I can also see where I'm striking the ball in the face. You can put some powder on the face, take some foot powder, or probably foot powder is the best, and you can see where you're striking the ball or striking the ball in the face. That's a good way to measure. If you can spend a little bit of money, and I actually just saw this today, the Blast Golf device. They're normally $150. I think they've got a sale going on right now for $75. So the Blast Golf, I think I've got mine right here, is this little device here. It fits on the end of your putter, and it's got a gyroscope in it. So it measures 3 degrees of motion. It measures how the putter moves left and right, forward and backwards, and up and down. So it's pretty good, and it can measure the twisting of the putter. So it syncs to your phone, and then it'll give you stroke length, tempo, stroke speed, face rotation, how much toe. It gives you a lot of data. And to have a device like this to putt at home, this is what I typically practice with because it's small, it connects right to my iPhone, and it's easy to use, and you don't need anything else. You can putt anywhere with it, and it gives you measurable data. And that's the key is you want to be able to measure what you're doing because if you do something right and it feels good and all of a sudden the data's wrong, you're like, well, that's not right. I got to go on.
Right.
Because so that's good. I think what you said, putting mirrors are good. I like to use a company called Eyeline Golf. They've got tons of putting aids on there, little tracks. One of the things they have that's really cool, I don't have it at home, but it's about 1.5 feet long, maybe 2 feet long, and it's got felt on it. So like when you guys go out in the morning, play golf early in the morning, and you see the ball roll on the green with the dew, you can see how the ball's rolling. Well, what this does the same thing, but what we're looking for is the ball bouncing or is it skidding at the beginning of your stroke? And if it's bouncing, well, then you're doing something wrong. You're either hitting up on it too much, that's launching it up into the air and make it bounce, or you're hitting down on it too much. So it's a great way to diagnose that. And then if it's skidding, then you kind of get a sense of what it feels like to make the ball skid because you see one solid line down the felt. It's a great little device.
Can some of that be also solved with a putter fitting?
Always. I mean, you're talking the fitting, right?
Right.
I mean, putter fittings. Yeah. You might have a good stroke and a putter that doesn't have enough loft on it. It might not. And putter fittings, I want people to understand, just because you get fit, it doesn't mean you need new equipment all the time, right? It might mean you just need an adjustment to the equipment that you have. It could be something with the lie angle or the loft, or something easy as making it shorter, or even a grip change. When you put a grip on the club, grips have different weights to them. Some weigh 30 grams, some weigh 50 grams. Well, think of adding a weight. It tends to counterbalance. You add a heavy grip on there, it makes the head feel lighter. Changes the weight, and the same thing goes for putting. Some of these super stroke putters are oversized, but they're really light. Well, that can make the club feel out of balance and the head might feel too heavy. So you have to be careful with when you start changing grips and stuff.
Yeah, and we did that with mine. I brought my putter to you, seeing if I should make a change, and all we ended up doing is shortening it up a bit so my arms could move a little bit freer. So for sure, it doesn't mean you're committed to spending more money on more equipment if you go for a fitting.
Absolutely.
Speaking of putting, a putting question that came in, he says, if I'm putting indoors on a mat with alignment lines and all my putts are pulling to the left, what can I try changing before I just start aiming more left?
Yeah, that's right. The first thing I would check is your ball position. So if your ball position starts getting too far to the left, when you go through, the putter is going to be closed. So you're going to start pulling it. So the first thing I would, and that typically when your ball moves forward in your stance, your shoulders tend to go a little bit left too. So try moving the ball back a little bit. Try move it one ball rotation, maybe, I don't know how far he's playing it, but move it back. You're never going to really move it farther back than the center of your stance. Sometimes your eye dominance has something to do with your ball position. I'm a right eye dominant player. If you're not sure what your dominant eye is, if you just hold your fingers up like this, guys, got to do this with me. Hold your fingers up like this, overlap the two holes, and then look at me through the hole. Okay. So Frank, your right eye, and Mike, your left eye.
Oh yeah. Cause we went what eye we went to. Okay.
We went to what eye.
Plus we just got our cover image there.
Yeah, there you go. So that's your eye dominance. That's the eye that you use to aim. So if you're if you're a right eye dominant like I am, I'm looking down with my right eye. I got to stand slightly open a little bit to see the line a little bit more. If you're left eye, you typically stand a little bit straighter. That's something I learned from the putt doctor. You guys ever have the putt doctor, Dr. Craig Farnsworth, on?
No, we haven't.
Oh, you got to get Doc
that.
on. Doc's the best. He's probably out in Palm Desert this time of year. He's the best. He's one of the putting gurus out there. And he was actually an ophthalmologist at trade, and then he got into golf. And he knows everything about how the eyes work relative to seeing things. And he'd be a great guest for you guys.
Yeah, we definitely got to check that out.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of the whole idea, like you said, of you don't necessarily need a new club or whatever when you go for the fitting. Jeremy here asks, he said, I like my driver head all right, but would it be worth getting my driver fit for a new shaft, or should I just go and get fit for a whole new driver setup?
I would start with the shaft and see how it works with the head. If you don't need a different amount of loft on your head, then a shaft change might be all you need. But if you're finding that you're not getting enough launch and spin with the amount of loft that you have, or you're getting too much for that matter, if your loft is too high and you can't adjust it, then you may need a new head. But nowadays you can usually just change the shaft to kind of tighten your dispersion and get a little bit more out of your driver.
Yeah.
But ultimately it might be you need a different loft too.
And I would say if you're going for the fitting possibly anyway, is why not try? It's like what we've learned that from you is just try more things. So you may, and we did this actually when we made the switch with the driver to the TS, we just use the same shaft, started with the same shaft and just changed the head. So he could kind of work the other way, use the same head, change the shaft, and then compare how that performs to maybe another head option and just see what the numbers come up with.
Yeah, I think and that's why we do that. And part of it is you come out knowing that either you've got the wrong combination of shaft and head, or you're like, my head's fine, I just need a different shaft. And mentally you feel better. The worst thing is standing over a driver going, God, I don't know if this is the right head for me or not. And all of a sudden you're whipping it out to the right. So it just kind of gives you peace of mind. I'll get some people to come up and we'll do a fitting, and I'm not going to change anything. I'm like, guys, I can't beat what you have. Go use it. Throw a new grip on there because it'll feel better to you, and your equipment's great.
Yeah. Well,
and
everybody likes to hear that, but if nothing else, you at least you come out, like I said, confidence is like, I think the best thing I've ever come out of these fittings with. Sure, the shiny new clubs are great, but the confidence, like just knowing it's right. I mean, even like I said, going back to the putter, when we went through that and we compared it and we did a whole video, you guys can see that on the YouTube channel, of comparing the one versus the other. And then I came out with the same putter that I came in with, but we just made a little bit of a change. But staying on drivers, George asked, how often would you recommend, changing your driver, getting fit for a new driver? And he also says with his individual situation, he's hitting, he keeps hitting low. He says almost stinger shots with his driver. And what do you think might be causing that?
So first question is, when should you get fit? Your body changes, your swing changes, new stuff comes out. Doesn't mean you have to buy a driver every year, but get fit every year. Make sure the setup that you have is correct, and make sure that the performance of it is what you want, and it's not, you're not giving anything up to some of the new technology. As far as that low stinger shot, so typically when a driver is coming out low, there are a couple of reasons. One, the ball is not teed up high enough. Two, the ball position is not far enough forward, or you're moving a little bit in front of it, and you end up hitting down on it a little bit too much. So I like to see the ball position with a driver somewhere up towards the front foot. Doesn't necessarily have to be on the inside of the front heel, but somewhere close to that. I like to see the ball teed up as high as you're comfortable playing it. Now, the only caveat to that is there's some players who are a little bit out to in because of the way they swing, and they're going to play the ball slightly lower. But if your swing path is kind of neutral to a little bit inside out, tee it up as high as you feel like you can. And then make sure that your upper body's somewhere behind the ball at impact. So the ball is forward. So when you come down, if you start with your upper body and lean into it like this, you're going to hit it low all day. And this is why Mike hits down on it too much right there. So if you get your lower body to go forward first, your upper body counters by dropping back. That'll make it a little bit easier to hit up on the ball or launch the ball up in the air a little bit. So those would be some of the things that I would kind of go to right away.
Gotcha. Here's a question for wedges. He says, should I upgrade my 56-degree SM6, which has a worn-out face and the hosel is detaching, or should I get it fixed? Which actually leads me to a side question. Is it even possible to really fix if you've got a worn-out face? Can you re-groove it? Is it something that's even? No. Yeah, I mean, I've seen those groove sharpeners and stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think what he's trying to say is, do I fix by re-gluing the head back onto the shaft?
Yeah, but he's also saying that it's got a worn-out face, which is what concerns me. Yeah.
Right. And your face, where's my wedge? The face, so when you look at a wedge, okay, so you've got the scoring lines. What you can't see on the camera is in between the scoring lines, there's micro grooves. So Title puts in there. Other manufacturers do something similar. And those micro grooves create friction. And the friction is what gives you spin and control over a shot. So when that starts getting worn out, what we'll find is the ball tends to launch a little higher and spin less. So you get these kind of high floating shots. Almost looks like the ball's kind of doing this in the sky. When you get to that worn out point, it's actually too late. You've already gone through the wedge. It's like the tires on your car, right? All the tires in the car, they've got grooves in them to disperse water. When those grooves get down too little, you start losing control of the car. You actually can't go as fast because they spin too much.
Right.
So grooves in the face are the same thing. So yes, you definitely want to replace that SM6 wedge if it's worn out to the point where it gets a little bit too shiny or you can't see the micro grooves anymore.
Gotcha.
So don't fix it. Go get yourself a new SM8 wedge. They're great.
There you go. Yeah, and especially if he's using it in the sand, that's the type of stuff that's going to accelerate. If he's using it as a sand wedge, it's going to accelerate that wear and tear.
Yeah. Plus, the wedges, one of the things Titleist does all their wedges is they put a hardener on the face. So the wedges don't wear out like they used to. I remember back in the 90s when I had wedges, I'd go through 2 or 3 wedges a year because you just practice so much with them. The facers are so soft. They just wear out really fast. Nowadays, they don't wear out as fast.
That's good.
Kevin, I wanted to bring this up because I've been busting Frank's chops since you cut his wedge down, and this is his new wedge, by the way. I made his new putter, by the way. In case you haven't seen it. But
I paid extra for that custom pink grip too.
Yeah, absolutely. But I got to tell you something. Lately he's been putting lights out. So I don't know, whatever you did to him and the help.
Yeah.
He's been hitting a lot more putts the last rounds we were playing in Florida before we got shut down at the beginning of the year. And dude, he was burying them. But I tried putting with his putter and it just wasn't for me. That size just wasn't for me. But it's working wonders for him.
He's different height, different arm length. That's why we do. That's why we do the fittings. And sometimes it's something just as simple as that. So body can get into the correct posture, and your nervous system knows what's right. When your body doesn't feel correct. If you feel sick or something doesn't feel right, we're all sensitive to that. And so when you're in a setup position, you're kind of going something like this because you really can't. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
Don't ignore don't think, well, it's just that's the way it's supposed to be. It's not. Your body, if you just kind of stand here nice and relaxed, bend forward and get into a position, that's your setup position. We all have a neutral position.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this, and it's one of the things I've learned from Mike Adams with his bioswing dynamics testing is we all have a neutral position, right? You shake someone's hand. Some guys are going to shake their hand like this. Some are going to be like this, and some are going to be like that. And that's just because that's what's neutral or natural for that player. So your setup is going to be the same. We don't teach everyone the same setup. There are certain principles that we like to see as far as posture and certain things, but some players are going to have their arms out. Some are going to have their arms in because they're broad-chested or narrow-chested or whatever.
And I'll tell you, but in all serious about it, we joke about it, but it's like you said, it's that one little change you made on that, cutting that putter down a little bit, and it just makes a huge difference.
Well, so. I thought the very first,
I love that.
The very first time we worked with Kevin, we thought like, what are we doing here? And he's measuring our arms, right, and stuff because every golfer is different. Actually, I saw this question pop up in the feed before, and it makes me think about it. Aaron says, any advice for a tall golfer, like really tall? He says he's 6'9" with long arms. Have you ever worked with anyone that tall, Kevin?
Yeah. So you remember the Nets basketball player Kerry Kittles?
Yeah.
Remember Kerry? He's a Jersey guy. He's down in your area. So Kerry was he was six. I think he was 6'6", 6'7", but his arms. So 6'6", 7". He had 7. So that's what 78 inches tall. I think his arms were like 84 inches. I mean, it's like a gigantic wingspan.
Yeah.
So, and actually having long arms is an advantage because then you don't need to have long clubs. And when your clubs aren't that long, they're not that heavy. So one of the disadvantaged tall players have, I'll never forget. You guys know the name Bobby Mercer?
Yeah.
So
sure.
Bobby was one of my idols growing up. He was center fielder for the Yankees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And working down at Doral, he came down, and actually what I didn't know at the time, his son Todd and my wife Debbie grew up here in Greenwich playing golf together, which we didn't connect that till later. But I got the caddy for Bobby and do some things for Bobby. And I used to caddy for him on the Celebrity Golf Tour, and I got to meet who was the tall center from San Antonio, from the Navy.
David Robinson?
David Robinson. So I got to meet David Robinson. David Robinson's 7 feet tall.
She's big guy.
I'm like, his head's up by my leg here. Like, well, I pulled out his 7-iron out of his bag. It was as long as my 3-wood. Now imagine and it had a steel shaft. So imagine how heavy that is.
Yeah.
Right? Because when something gets longer, it weighs more. Driver's your longest club. It's 45 inches, but it's also your lightest. Well, here's a 7-iron with a 120-gram shaft and a massive head, and trying to swing that thing around your body. Imagine trying to do that. So for the tall player, like who asked the question, if he's got really long arms, or hopefully he's got short legs, relative to his arms, having the shorter club's going to help. If you don't, you have to go to lighter weight shafts. Nowadays you can go all the way, in steel, I think you can go all the way down to 70 grams in the steel shaft. Mm-hmm. Or you can go to a graphite shaft just to kind of remove some of the weight, the overall weight. Now, when they get really long, the swing weight goes up. Some manufacturers can take out some of the weight, and you may have to go to a custom place where they can make them even a little bit lighter. So that would be something you want to be careful of, is the overall weight of the club and then the swing weight of the club. And one of the things, you can also make it more upright, which makes it play longer, or and stuff. So you can kind of change some things like that too.
Yeah, we need a big and tall shop for what do you call it, for golf clubs now.
Yeah,
I know this. I got a feeling what the answer is going to be. It's going to be dependent on the golfer, but it's a good question here that Cody asked. He said, should I play the T300 for the forgiveness or the T200 for the long run if he's planning to get better? And I know that's a question you ask us when we go through fittings. You say, are you working on something now? Are you changing your swing? You're getting better. So I think it's a good way to kind of ask that question there.
So if you can ask Cody, or if Cody's there, Cody, what level player are you? Are you saying better, like you're a 25 handicap trying to get to a 15, or are you like a 12 handicap trying to get down to a 9? I think it's different. If you're on the higher end handicap going down, I would definitely go with the T300. Play with that for a few years, get yourself better, and then go down to the T200. Now, you could kind of make an argument either way, because maybe he's a really good athlete and he hasn't played very much golf, that he could handle he could go with the T200, which is a little less forgiving than the T300, mm-hmm. but he's just got good eye-hand coordination and he hasn't played much. If he's a 12 trying to get to a 5, I would definitely go with the T200. I think you're going to find the feel through the turf. It's a little less forgiving, but it's got a nice wide sole. If you look at my T200s here, it's got a nice forgiving sole, but it's not huge looking, and it doesn't bounce off the turf too much. So that's not too forgiving, is what I'm saying. Look, I'm a pretty good player. I'm using the T200, so there's nothing wrong with going to that.
Yeah.
Frank, you're right. It is player dependent, but why is he not as good as he is? Because it's because of lack of playing, or what's the reason? So there's a multifaceted way to go with that, but hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, well, yeah, Cody said he didn't respond on where he's at right now, but he did say thank you very much. So it sounds like you answered the question. But one thing I would piggyback onto that too is, and this is another part of a good fitting, would be possibly mixing that bag a little like you did for me, where I needed some of that extra forgiveness with the 4 and the 5 iron, our T300s, and then we went T200 the rest of the way down. So, I mean, Cody, that's an option too, is mixing it up a little bit.
Definitely a great way. So you're getting smart there, Frank.
Hey, don't worry. I'm not taking your job anytime soon. That's for sure.
Master fitter.
Let's see here. Paul asked the question. He said, I got fit for my irons about 4 years ago. They still perform fine. But how do I know that I'm not doing myself a disservice, I guess, by sticking with them?
I'll tell you, you are doing yourself a disservice and not getting them checked. It does just because they're 4 years old doesn't mean they're bad, but sometimes over a period of time, especially when you practice a lot on mats and stuff, the lie or the loft can adjust a little bit, and it doesn't take much to affect where the ball goes. So if I took this club here, this is a 5 iron I've got, and if I point this right at you guys, right? If I raise the toe up a little bit, where does that start to point?
Yeah, it's pointing to the left there. Yep.
Starts going left. So you might make a good swing and hit the ball left, and you think it's something wrong with your swing when your lie angle changes. Now, if you take a club with more loft, right? So now I'm going to go to a pitching wedge. Okay. So now I take that pitching wedge and I do the same thing, and I move it, and I don't have to move it as much for it to move a lot.
Even more
so
dramatic.
All of a sudden you're more dramatic. So what happens? Well, you have a pitching wedge, you're 120 yards off, you have a pitching wedge, and all of a sudden you're hitting it in the left bunker. Like, God, it's got to be my swing, or maybe I'm incorrectly. Well, your buddy says you're aiming straight. Well, it's got to be your swing. So what do you start to do? You start to change your swing. Well, all of a sudden you screwed up a good swing because your lie angle changed just a little bit.
Yeah.
So the answer is go get your clubs checked. Make sure the specs are right as far as loft and lie, and the gapping's correct. And I would suggest you do that probably the beginning of every year. If your clubs aren't forged, you can probably go every 2 years. But they will change, banging around when you travel or when you sitting in your car or doing whatever. So do yourself, spend a little bit of money, get them checked. Again, just go back to that peace of mind, knowing that the clubs that you're setting up to are absolutely perfect. That's one of the things that the tour players do every week. The clubs are their money makers. That's how they earn a living. And 1 degree, at 200 yards, they're hitting that 5 iron 200 yards or 6 iron 200 yards. And if they're 1 degree, that means they're in the left side of the green or maybe even the left bunker. That could be the difference between winning and losing a tournament, or making the cut, not making the cut.
Yeah. And one stroke can be a lot of money. 1 stroke difference at the end on Sunday can be a lot of money for those guys. Now, is that something? Kevin, Sorry, I just wanted to just clarify on this too. Like, let's say he did find there was an issue with loft or lie with his current setup, and he wanted to keep that current setup. Is that something that you can bend it back to where it was, or does he have to replace the club? Okay.
No, we can bend them. We can bend them 1 or 2 degrees. It depends upon the metal, but most of the metals within the last 8 years or so, they're pretty easy to move 1 or 2 degrees. The only clubs that are really difficult to move are pings, because they use a 17-4 steel. But all the other manufacturers, we can usually move them a degree or so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, Kevin, I remember when we first came to you for that first fitting, the full bag fitting, I was using irons that I had for 6 years, and we made that one change to the APs, and we saw such a huge change. And then a year later, we went to the T series, and I was like, no, there's no way I can improve anything here, because there was such a huge improvement, and I love these. And then you found out from the T series fitting that you're like, hey, you're tightening things up. You're getting just a little bit more distance. He's like, it's kind of a no-brainer for you to move on to this next equipment. So, I was playing with the APs for like, I don't know, a year before we made the switch even. So
yeah, and that's a couple of things probably happened. A couple of things happened there. One, you got better as a player.
Yep, I remember you saying that.
Titleist changed the specs on them a little bit. They made the manufacturers. They're smart. They do a lot of R&D. I'm going to try to get a couple of R&D guys on next week, or a couple of tour fitters from Titleist on next week to talk about this. But these guys are smart. They got some supercomputers doing a lot of high-powered stuff, trying to figure out things. golf's gotten to a point now where they're dealing with millimeters and microns and moving weights just a little bit here and moving weight from the hosel to the head and around here and different things. And I think one of the things you're going to start seeing again is you're going to start seeing manufacturers go back to glued heads in drivers, fairways, and hybrids.
Why is that?
I think
what do you think?
because they can take the weight from those sure fit systems and redistribute it throughout the head a little bit. Callaway's already started doing that. TaylorMade started doing that. And I was listening to a friend of mine, Kirk Agori, was on last week, and he was talking about this, and it kind of popped in my head. I'm like, that makes total sense. You had, I forget which model it was with Callaway, but you had one head that was a really fireball head. Thing took right off, and then they came out with the Epic head, and then they kind of lost it, kind of a little higher, a little bit spinnier, and then they came out with the Rogue head, which was glued again, and the ball kind of rocketed off again, and now they're out with the Maverick again, where it's all glued head. So I think you're going to start to see some manufacturers go back into that glued model again for some of their fairways and hybrids.
I could certainly see that. Makes a lot of sense. We're going to wrap it up in a minute because we're coming up on our hour. I want to take one more question. Yeah. Let's see here. We've got good question here. Mobeen, he asks, I've been playing steel shafts, but I've been thinking about switching to graphite. What are your thoughts on getting fit for graphites? He says, I'm a relatively young guy, 35 years old, healthy. I know, again, there's a lot of factors. You're trying to fit people without seeing anything here, but do you have any thought processes that go into whether you guide someone towards steel or graphite, or any guidance you could give him there?
Yeah, so graphite now has gotten a lot better. We used to put people in the graphite because they had some kind of a joint injury, whether it hand, wrist, elbow, something in there. So they needed some vibration dampening, or there was a strength issue. They just weren't strong enough and needed something a little bit light. Nowadays, you can get graphite shafts that weigh 120 grams, just like a steel shaft. But the way graphite shafts are made, they've greatly improved the way they make them. And so the consistency from shaft to shaft used to be an issue. It's not so much nowadays. I still prefer, I think you get a little bit more feel out of a steel shaft, just the way the shaft vibrates and the way it goes through the head. So I tend to shy away from graphite unless we need it for weight issues or for like I said, the vibration dampening stuff. There is one manufacturer that makes a club that's actually a graphite shaft with a steel core, which is the steel fiber shafts, which kind of blends a little bit of both. So it's got an interesting feel to it. You can go that route. It's really going to come down to, and you guys, I'm going to say, is it comes down to how it performs for you.
Yeah.
But by taking some weight out of the shaft, the head's going to feel a little bit heavier. You may like that. It may feel like a sledgehammer to you, so you may need to go to something, either a heavier one or not. But my feeling is if you don't need the weight or the vibration dampening, go with steel. You get, one is you have more options. Two is they tend to be less expensive, especially if one breaks.
Right.
And three,
right.
And three, just the feel. The feel of the club's a little bit better, I find, with steel versus graphite.
So just imagine how many graphite shafts I would break.
We were worried about you breaking those hickory shafts. Remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So as a fitter, you would have to have a very specific reason to fit somebody into a graphite shaft, is what it sounds like. But because there are so many options.
For irons.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely for irons. I think for hybrids, I actually do fit some people in the steel shafts for hybrids. Sometimes I'll put graphite shafts in longer irons, like some of these utility clubs, like Titleist has the U series, the U500 and the U.
Yep.
510, which I may go for the U510, which is more of the driving iron. I may actually go graphite, a little bit lighter, make it perform more like a hybrid. For the U500, I may go more with what you have in your irons, because I think it's more of an iron head. You're going to play it more that way. And then definitely once you get past the hybrid, you're definitely going to go graphite. I don't think there's anybody on tour using a steel shafted fairway or or driver anymore.
No,
I think Tiger was one of the last ones back in the 90s that I can remember.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. I mean, we covered a lot today. Like I said, if we didn't get to anyone's questions, we apologize. We try to cover as much as we can in the hour. But like I said, Kevin, make sure you guys are following him on all the different social accounts. He's very accessible in those ways. And if you do have questions, Kevin's always great about answering as many as he can. But otherwise, Kevin, for anybody else here who maybe didn't hear on some of the other times when we had you, what are some ways that people can work with you or get in contact with you?
So they can always go to my website, which is just my name, kevinsprecher.com. You can always get me through there. I'm on all the the main social medias, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all at Kevin Sprecher or Kevin Sprecher Golf. You can shoot me through there. I'm happy to take a look at some swings. I got a little bit of free time. Actually, we were talking before.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, well, what am I going to do with all this time that I have? I'm like, all of a sudden, I don't have a lot of free time, but I'm happy to take a look at people's swings. I posted just a couple days ago on your guys' Facebook page. Any of your tribe members that want me to take a look at their swings, I normally charge $40 or $90 for a live lesson. I'm taking 20% off for any of the Golficity guys, and anyone who's watching it that's not in Golficity, join the team, and I'll give you the 20% off, and that's going to go on for at least through May, probably through May or until we get back outside.
Yeah.
And then I'm also doing some live stuff myself throughout the week. I've got some great people coming on. I got Ian Highfield, who you guys know, coming on tomorrow night. And then I know Kirk Adams from Ben Shear Golf, who you guys also know.
Yep.
I got him on Friday. Yeah. And then Saturday, for all you junior golfers, I got two great junior coaches, a buddy of mine out in Arizona, Jeff Fisher, and then another guy, Chris Meal, who's a friend who runs one of the largest junior tournaments. And we're going to talk about, if you're a junior golfer interested in going to college and how to work on your game and some junior club fitting stuff like that.
And where can they see your lives? Is that going to be on your Facebook page?
That'll be on my Facebook page. I'll post the replays on my YouTube channel, but that'll all be on my Facebook page, and just kind of follow me on social, and I'll be posting stuff out every day about when I'm doing stuff.
That's perfect. And also what Kevin was referencing before is our Facebook group. It's a free group for Golficity, and Kevin for a long time has been so great in that group that often people will tag him with questions and he'll hop in and answer them. So we appreciate that time, just like we appreciate your time here. But yeah, so I'm sure we'll get a chance to do this again, but really looking forward to actually getting back to seeing you face to face, Kevin. We got to get through this lockdown,
Yeah. Hopefully a couple more weeks or at most a month, and we'll get through it, but let's get outside and start playing golf. And for all of you guys and men and women listening, get swinging, get outside, do some swings, get out of the sofa, get your mind going. I think one of and I'll kind of leave you with this. Not only do you have to get your physical body going, but you got to get your mind sharp. So play your favorite course, whether your home course or Bethpage Black or wherever you like to go play, and play the course in your mind over and over and over again, and play it how you'd want to play it. See the shot landing here, see the shot you'd play there, and go through it. Play it every day in your mind, get your mind sharp. So when you get out there, you would have played the course, hundreds of times. And that's one of the things that'll help you when you start getting a little bit nervous. I do that when I get ready for my tournaments. If I've seen the course, I'll try to play it in my mind 100 times. That's something I learned from Dr. Rotella.
Yeah.
Is how comfortable would you feel if you played the course 100 times versus once, right? So your course, go through it, play it the way you want to play it, and then see if you can sharpen your mind as well as get your body activated.
I love that tip. And that's something we can all do at home. So it's a great tip.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
exactly.
Kevin, great as always chatting with you. And thank you everybody who joined, posted your questions on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you guys were. We're going to, like we talked about earlier, we're going to keep this video live on all the channels so we can refer back to it. Like if your question was answered earlier, wherever it may be, we'll put that in here because there's always such great information whenever we work with you, Kevin. So we appreciate it.
Guys, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to talk, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
Sounds great. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.